So right on the heels of the release of DC's League of Super Pets or whatever the movie's called, I heard it's actually pretty good, but Warner Brothers seemingly out of left field has gone and canceled the upcoming Batgirl or not series, film rather, that was going to be released originally on HBO Max, but there had been some reports that it might be going theatrical, much like the Blue Beetle movie that was recently announced too. It also was going to be an HBO Max exclusive, but they recently announced that that was going to go theatrical. So Batgirl was also kind of some nebulous thing in the ether that we just didn't really know, A, if it was connected to, the Flash or the DCEU because we knew Michael Keaton's Batman was making his would be his second appearance if the Flash would have came out now. Who knows what's at stake for that movie at this point, given that whole situation. That's a whole other video right there. But nevertheless, this information again seemingly came out of left field. But let's take a little look at the article here and kind of break down what's going on, why they decided to do this, and why personally I know a lot of people might think that this is like bad news for the DCEU and DC strikes again, Warner Brothers strikes again, just they don't have their shit together kind of thing. But like honestly, I think this is the first indication of them actually getting their shit together and doing something that would hopefully pave the way and set things straight both for Warner Brothers and more importantly for the DC universe in general and just all their IPs. But let's take a look at the article and we can break this down a little bit more as thing goes on. So the first article I saw this from was from The Wrap, and right away before we even get through the article, I got one thing to say is that as soon as I heard this, I said, this sounds exactly like something this man did. Recently, Alan Horn has come on. David Zaslav got him. The poor man cannot retire. He worked at Warner Brothers for so long, a legendary producer, and he was the head of Warner Brothers theatrical division for years upon years. He retires. Bob Iger pulls him out of retirement to come lead the theatrical division for Disney. And this is the same Disney that over the last 10 years has become the juggernaut of the box office, the most financially successful movie studio of all time, was under the stewardship of Alan Horn. I mean, if that doesn't say anything to you, I don't know what will. And now David Zaslav, the new CEO of Warner Brothers, post Discovery taking them over, he's gone out of his way and again pulled this poor man from his second retirement to come help Warner Brothers out, which is kind of poetic though, because that's where he got his start initially. So, nevertheless, through the article, they go on to say that Batgirl was initially designed, like I said, to be an HBO Max release. Now, the interesting thing here is that they spent $90 million making this movie, and that's a lot of money. And I think, honestly, it takes someone wearing some big boy pants to just want to throw $90 million away. Most people, I mean, I honestly, me and myself in a situation would probably say, well, we might as well just put it on HBO Max. Maybe we'll get some subscribers or some viewers come in better than just throwing $90 million away. But maybe not, because I would argue that if anything that's indicated in this article is correct, and that essentially there were other reports saying that the movie wasn't doing so well in some test screenings, it's essentially the vibe I'm getting from everything said in the article is that it was never designed to be a theatrical film, and a lot of people are not taking this. They're taking this headline, for instance, here. I saw someone, if you just look up Batgirl canceled, for instance, there's this one stuck out to me from Discussing Film. They tweeted here, Warner Bros. Discovery decided to cancel the release of Batgirl as they are committed to making DC titles big theatrical event films, and Batgirl isn't that. Now, I feel like people are misconstruing that into thinking that like somehow the Batgirl character just isn't a big screen event film, and like I don't think that's the case. I think what the intent behind scrapping this film is getting Warner Brothers for one, but getting DC on a proper pace. There is no excuse for DC. They don't have to, like, DC doesn't have to put out, like, they don't have to replicate Marvel's success, right? They don't have to chase that dragon that Marvel's done, because it's never going to happen. No one's going to be as successful as Marvel has been probably ever. right? Like, that's not something that anybody should really chase. But there is no excuse for DC, of all companies, to not be able to at least compete in a comparable way and have some sort of, seemingly comparable success when DC is home of the most iconic and arguably the best superhero properties and comic books and superhero characters of all time. So it's like, it's always amazed me just how it's been just so, the DC properties themselves have just been so mismanaged at Warner Brothers, and like they've had some slews of success, and it's just crazy. Like you'd think that after the Nolan films, like the Nolan Batman trilogy, amongst the most critically well received and successful at the box office movies of all time, let alone comic book movies. And it's like ever since then, though, like because Marvel just blew up, they were just trying to replicate what they did, and they just tried to rush things in. It's like that's what it looks like from the outside in, and they weren't focusing on just trying to make good movies, right? And again, when it comes to this headline here that they're running with, as you see, the new owners and management led by CEO David Zaslav are committed to making DC titles big theatrical event films, and Batgirl isn't that. That's not a quote from anybody at Warner Brothers saying that. So that's why I'm saying people are misconstruing this. Because if you look at this, they are quoting this line from the Rap article. That's not an actual comment by anybody at Warner Brothers. So nobody at Warner Brothers actually said that, for one. But for two, it's being misconstrued as like, ooh, like Batgirl just isn't a big event film. And it's like, it's not because of the Batgirl property. It's because they didn't intend on that movie to be a theatrical released film. It was made on a budget and everything just to be an HBO Max release. It was essentially a home video release. That is the type of quality that they were going for with a Batgirl. They weren't spending hundreds of millions of dollars like they would on the Batman or a Justice League film, even though when you spend $350 million on Justice League, apparently DC couldn't do that right either. But nevertheless, that's what they're meaning. And this whole thing just indicates to me that probably with the help of Alan Horn coming in here, but more than likely just Zaslav and Alan Horn, whoever it may be, maybe it's just all Zaslav, but I just find it a big coincidence that we get this information just on the heels of Alan Horn joining Warner Brothers. Like this happened within the last week, and just immediately he's here, and boom, stuff's getting cut. The Axe of Zaslav strikes again, and like it's just so that's my interpretation of this anyway. No insider information, but what it says to me in general is that David Zaslav and Warner Brothers is focusing on getting the DC universe in a position that it should have always been in. Because when you think about it, they are literally losing billions of dollars every year. Billions upon billions of dollars every year. When you look back, like I said, you can't replicate Marvel's success, but there's no reason that DC shouldn't have comparable success given the IP that comes along with DC. So when you look back at all the Marvel films, they average about $1 billion. DC could at least be doing half of that if they had a system in place that would allow them just to get these films released and they were good, for one. Like even just like they're just losing so much money by not having the DC film slate just doing something it should be doing, just putting out good movies on a regular, consistent basis. Look at this Flash movie, for instance. We've been waiting on the Flash film. The Ezra Miller solo Flash film, wrap your heads around this. The Ezra Miller solo Flash film was announced when season 1 of the Flash CW TV series came out. The Flash TV series has been on for 9 seasons now. You announce a movie to go in production almost 9 years ago. And that movie still isn't out. And at this point, given the whole Ezra Miller situation, who knows if it ever is going to come out. But nevertheless, that's pretty much the situation here. It's like they decided to, despite what any altered headlines might say, they are scrapping this because They don't want something to come out and it's not up to par with what they want their IP to be. You know what I mean? It's like, would you release something with your name on it, with your brand, especially when you're in a position as DC is right now? They need to readjust. They need to restructure. They need to get their universe on track. It's super confusing right now to even people like me who are into this stuff and pay attention to the news, and we watch and absorb all sorts of content related to DC and comic books and everything like that. It's a pretty confusing situation just looking at the films, right? Like, we have this Flash movie, if it ever does come out, that's going to have Ben Affleck's Batman in it. It's going to have Michael Keaton's Batman in it. And then we had the Robert Pattinson, Batman movie itself. Then you're going to come and have this Batgirl movie come out, and it's going to have Michael Keaton's Batman. Does any of these Batmen connect in any sort of way? We know, people in the know, we know that the Robert Pattinson Batman has nothing to do with this other stuff that's happening in the DCEU, but to a layman, kind of confusing. And then when you have this Flash movie, who by all reports is supposed to be a decent movie, which is why they haven't come out and just announced that they're just not going to release that, because it's supposedly pretty good, and they've spent like $200-300 million on it. So that one's a little bit tougher of a situation, especially when that one, it was, if the reports are true, was kind of set up to be a sort of catalyst and a new starting point for the DCEU at this time, because that's where they were going to introduce Michael Keaton's Batman to do whatever he may be doing going forward in the DCEU, and they were giving Ben Affleck's Batman a graceful exit, and that's what pretty much a quote from Ben himself. He wanted to come back and just give his character a proper goodbye. So, but I could see why David Zaslav and Alan Horn were sitting in a room and they're looking at their upcoming slate, and if their number one priority is getting their DC universe, their biggest money-making potential IP they have, like as far as Warner Brothers is concerned, the biggest potential bang for their buck is their DC Universe properties. Because if they could even have 1/3 of the successes someone like Marvel has had, that's a lot of money. You're just leaving it on the table because you're just not doing as much as they could be doing. They're not putting out enough quality content from that IP, and they're not putting out enough content from that IP, and it's so disjointed, no one even knows really what's going on with it at this point. So to me, I interpret this whole decision, and I hope I'm right. Like I said, no 100% insider information, and no one's come out and actually commented on this directly from, we haven't heard from Alan Horn, we haven't heard from Zaslav, but this is, essentially an interpretation, an informed interpretation, but nevertheless, to me, it says that they are making getting the DC universe pretty much their top priority at Warner Brothers. And again, I think there's enough evidence to back that up with just this past week. Our man Alan Horn here comes in to work with Warner Brothers. I'm fairly certain him and Zaslav sat down and just took a look at the release slate. I could see a man like Alan Horn saying, "What's going on with this Batgirl movie? We spent $90 million on this. Is this connected to X, Y, and Z Batman property? We have this Flash thing coming out. Does it have anything to do with that?" Like, just running through things. It's a really logical conclusion, in my opinion, that you would just come up with and say, you know what? We don't need to make these properties to go on the television. You know what? We need to prioritize these properties to be event films. We need to put the time, love, care, investment, and money into these properties that what we need to put into them, what we want to get out of them. Is kind of how I'm interpreting this. It's like, why are we going to make something like on a made-for-TV sort of budget with our biggest properties? Like, I imagine, like, and that's the thing, my buddy was saying that, like, you don't understand why they just didn't go ahead and just release this. Like, it's already made. You spend $90 million, you're just going to throw it away. And I said, like, I would rather them scrap this. I'd rather someone come in, put on the big boy pants, and just burn $90 million in an effort to make something better. You know what I mean? Like, would you want this movie to come out and be let's not even say it's bad. Let's just say it's it's just like it's okay. Why not? It was okay. Nothing earth shattering. Wasn't terrible. Could have been better. Whatever. You want to settle for that? You know what I mean? Like, why would you want to settle for that? Like, if they're gonna scrap this, I would have to assume they have something better in mind. Like, maybe a true Bat Family film at some point in time. Like, maybe let's actually reassess this, and this might be kinda confusing to the audience because if this Batgirl, it doesn't really connect to anything else we have going on, not that everything needs to be connected by any means, but if it's not gonna be something very impactful and world building, like, quality-wise to be a standalone thing like the Batman or Joker, like, if it's not of that quality, what is the point of even putting it out? Like, why would we make something just because we can make it? We could take this property and do something much better with it in the future. So it only makes more sense that that's the kind of the direction they should go. That's the direction I would go. So I'd rather someone come in and just have the cojones to just say, "No, let's just scrap this. We will do something better down the line, and we're gonna move on. We're gonna get everything in order. We're not gonna be making a bunch of confusing and conflicting properties. We're gonna get this stuff on track." And I respect that. So I can only hope that we see a better return going forward on these kind of things. Now, I do feel bad, obviously, for Leslie Grace and then the directors. I was actually more excited for this film after seeing the Miss Marvel series because I thought I'll probably mispronounce their names, but I'll throw them up on the screen just in case. But the directors, Adil El Arbi and Bilal Falah, they did I believe the first 2 episodes of Miss Marvel, and they just like they set the they set the pace for that. Usually the 2 people the people who direct the first episodes of television series, they set the tone for the entirety of the show. And I they knocked it out of the park. And they even did a good job with Bad Boys for Life. That movie had no business being any good, and I enjoyed it. It was pretty good. And I was looking forward to seeing Brendan Fraser as, Firefly. I love Brendan Fraser. That would've been great. I was looking forward to seeing Michael Keaton come back as Batman in some capacity. But in the end, if they're willing to scrap it, to me, that more or less says that it really wasn't worth putting out there. And why would you wanna put something out that's not going to bring more value to your brand? You know what I mean? Not that like, even if this was okay and it was fine, whatever, if it's still not going to be bringing in value, why even bother doing it? Just scrap it, move on, maybe do a completely different, Batgirl or Bat Family thing down the line. I think that's a much better decision. So I'm only hoping that's the case here. But it is, I mean, even though I think this is a good decision in the long run, I still feel bad for everybody involved, and it is definitely way out of left field. But I mean, the good news is, I guess, take solace in the fact if you do feel bad about it and you like Leslie Grace and all these things, like they did their job and they got paid. They might this was going to be an HBO Max thing, so it's not like they were going to have back end points from box office to make even more and more money. Everybody involved in this did get paid already, so you can take solace in that fact. So I wouldn't feel too bad. I feel mainly bad just because this would have been a being Batgirl, right? And that's a pretty big deal. So, like, I kind of feel bad that they're not releasing it just for her sake and her family's sake. I'm sure it would have been pretty cool just to say, like, "Look at this, I'm Batgirl." So I feel bad in that situation. But in the greater, larger scope of movie making and the DC properties itself, I'm hoping it's a good decision. I have to assume it's a good decision. I trust that Alan Horn, aside from a knee-jerk reaction firing James Gunn over some tweets, he's made good decisions in the business world aside from that. He did have the foresight to go back later on, and they rehired James Gunn, though, so we do have that, but nevertheless, I'm curious to see what you guys think. Do you agree with my buddy? With my buddy John, we'll be hopefully doing some more videos with him here soon. So, buddy, do you agree with him in that they should have just went ahead and dumped this on HBO Max? I don't think so if they didn't think it was gonna bring value, but I'd be curious. Just let me know what you guys think about that. Would you rather seen it in general? Because that is kind of the downside now. Is like we're not even gonna know and be able to judge for ourselves whether it was worth it, which that kind of sucks. But let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. I am going to go and probably open up this bad boy. I got my Nightmare Batman and Superman Hot Toys 2-pack in today, so I'm gonna be messing with that here soon. So That's what I was saying. It's a big deal for the Bat family for me. And I got this today and Batgirl got canceled today, so that kind of sucks. But nevertheless, let me know what you guys think about this down in the comment section below. And that's it. I'll see you guys in the next video.